Impacts of information system. We will start by defining information ethics and explain the purpose of a code of ethics. Identify the policies organizations should implement for information management. Define intellectual property and discuss the issues related to the infringement of intellectual property. Explain information privacy and outline the methods for improving the privacy of information. Describe the digital divide and explain Nielsen's 3 stages of the digital divide. And finally, we'll discuss the other social impacts to information technology use. Let's start by defining what is information systems ethics. The introduction of new technology can have a profound effect on human behavior because new technologies give us capabilities that we did not have before, which in turn create environments and situations that have not been specifically addressed in an ethical context. So essentially what we are trying to say here is new technologies give new capabilities. These new capabilities create a new environment and new possibilities of the situations. These new environment and new situations create possibilities of new behavior. And not all behaviors are covered under the law. And it is difficult many times to determine whether certain behavior is ethical or not until the law catches up. How do we deal with these? So let's consider the example of prior to creation of atomic bomb, humans did not have the ability to bomb a geography and impact or maybe kill a large number of people. So now when it is right, when it is justified, those may be different for different people. But the creation of atomic bomb gave enormous power in the hands of the government, in particular the select few people in the world, to have the power which can impact so many people at a single decision. On a information technology space, we can consider the rise of social media somewhere in 2004-5 gave new capabilities, new expressions in the digital space, and discovering new aspects of the people which was otherwise not available or accessible to the people prior to the advent of the social media like Facebook. So I will in particular speak about an example of the case of global science research, which invited people to participate in a academic research using the app called This Is Your Digital Life, where people on Facebook voluntarily engaged and shared information on their psychological makeup. Now, what the participants did not know that when they are granting access to their Facebook data, they are also providing access to the data of their friends and the first connections. As a result, when 270,000 people participated in the paid research, the data of about 87 million people was gathered in this experiment. Before Facebook could detect and come to know about this large breach of data, the data of the global science research was already sold to a company called SCL, and SCL in turn allowed its subsidiary Cambridge Analytica to harvest and mine this data to develop strategies to influence the outcome of the 2016 presidential election. And this was testified by Mark Zuckerberg in 2018, and accepted that such and such breach happened and came up with the strategies and mechanisms to keep an eye on such breaches. Now, something which was a simple research was used in a way which impacted the outcome of the president of the country. So these kind of harvesting or mining the data of social media wasn't unheard of. So based on these new behaviors, new laws are being developed and enacted. So until the law catch up, there are certain guidelines which are created by Academy of Computing Machines, which give a broad framework about what is ethically acceptable and what is not acceptable. One of the very basic principle is unless and until an individual is authorized or have the explicit permission of the other person, one should not enter the premises where the systems of the other individual are kept. One should not access the data files and the softwares licensed to a particular individual. Just because if it is available and kept in open does not give the right to access and use it. Also, certain principles were enacted that the design of the new systems should be done in a fashion it does not demean other people. Finally, at the organizational level, no system should be designed to degrade the human quality of life. And also, human computer ergonomics should be taken into account while designing new systems. So these are some of the guidelines that are kind of created by ACM. So what do we mean by this code of ethics? These are the outlines. These outlines a set of acceptable behaviors for professional or social group, which is agreed upon by all members of the group. The challenge with the ethical guidelines or the code of ethics is that it does not have a legal framework to bind an individual. But these are the set of guidelines people collaboratively come up with to protect the other individuals who are not tech savvy or who are not aware of what is available and what is possible. Now, some of the impacts of these new types of systems is the protection of the intellectual property and the copyrights. Because in the digital space, the marginal cost of making a copy of something valuable is almost zero. It is just copying and pasting somewhere and you got a duplicate copy of it. Replicating is fast and efficient and financially feasible. So how do we deal with these intellectual property challenge? And from the increase in patent applications swamping the government's patent office to the new laws that must be put in place to enforce copyright protection. Copyright is the right to make a copy of a intellectual property created in the digital space. So in Canada, we have Canada Intellectual Property Office, which deals with the laws and the regulations governing the intellectual property in Canada. So what is a copyright protection? So it is a protection given to songs, computer programs, books and other creative works. So the copyright was always there prior to the advent of the digital world and the software programs. It is extended to the new intellectual properties that are created. Let's kind of understand what is intellectual property. Intellectual property is something of value created out of one's intellect. And it's an idea, it's a certain use of an existing product. Now, protecting an idea is difficult. So, protection cannot be granted to an idea, but protection can be granted to the manifestation of that idea or an output of that idea. For example, somebody thinking of a certain music composition cannot be protected. But once somebody creates that piece of music and records it and keeps it in the software copy, it can be protected. So copyright involves the degree to which a copying is allowed. It could be completely free for all copying versus not allowing even a single copy of it. But sometimes people may want to kind of use the intellectual property to review it, to describe it, to explain it. So we have what we call as the fair use and the fair dealing put into place. Fair dealing is dimensionalized on 6 aspects. The fair dealing in terms of the purpose for which a copy will be made. It could be the character in which it will be used. The amount of copywriting, let us say for example in the textbooks up to 10% of the material could be used without infringing on the copyright. The alternatives of the product or a service, the nature of use and the effect of the copy. So the laws and frameworks are developed and enforced by the Canada Intellectual Property Office, which comes up with the regular update on the copyright and the intellectual property protection. So we have a Copyright Act. So notice and notice regimes is a tool established in Copyright Act to help copyright owners deal with online copyright infringement. Example, illegal downloading of the music or the software, so that they can protect their copyright material while respecting the interests and freedom of users. Now, when we speak on the other extreme of the copyright authorization, is where people want to make it available for free for anybody to use. For example, we have cases of open educational resources or open software. So these are granted with the legal framework provided by what we call as Creative Commons, wherein the acknowledgement is to be placed for the original creator, even if there is no financial transaction happening in the use of it, but acknowledgement is mandated, and certain statements or the preludes or prefaces may be asked to be placed on the in the software while using it in different places and different contexts. Next is the patents and trademarks. So these are also an important form of intellectual property protection. For example, circuit designs in semiconductors could be patented, prescription drug formulas could be patented, firearms, locks, plumbing, engines, etc. They can be protected under the intellectual property protection. We have trademarks. Trademarks are the word, phrase, logo, shape, or sound that identifies a source of goods or services. For example, Nike swoosh or Facebook F and Apple's Apple are all trademarked. So, Canada Trademark Database maintains the database of all the copyrights granted in the last 150 years. So one can actually search for the trademark before applying for the trademark, so that if somebody has already acquired a trademark, other people cannot use it. And in case somebody uses it, there is a protection available wherein somebody can sue the person and pull them into legal consequences. Trademarks could be of two types. It could be ordinary trademark, as in the logos or the certain font or a certain color or a certain shape, which is generally what we are familiar and aware of. And there could be other trademarks like certification trademark, which are used by the industry or a consortium of companies, such as hallmarking for purity of gold. It could be organic certification that the product has been developed as per the organic farming practices, etc. So these are the examples of the certifications. We also notice on the websites we have HTTPS. So when we use HTTPS, it is trademarked that it means a secure hypertext transmission protocol. Let's talk about the privacy. Privacy has many definitions, but here privacy will mean the ability to control information about oneself. The ability to maintain our privacy has eroded substantially in the past decades due to information systems. So we have Canada Privacy Act, which deals with it, which controls on what information is made accessible and available to someone. Particularly, let's say we talk about the health records, educational records. It could be your banking information, financial credit score, etc. So these are all protected by the Privacy Act, In fact, every new piece of information that is created are graded by the degree of privacy and confidentiality that is to be maintained, and maintained as per the framework provided by the Privacy Act. We have what we call as PIPEDA, which is the Personal Information Protection and Electronic Documents Act, which is a Canada's federal private sector privacy law, and it requires individuals to understand the nature and purpose and consequences of what they are consenting to. In order for consent to be considered valid or meaningful, organizations must inform individuals of their privacy practices in a comprehensive and understandable manner. Now, with the spread of the internet and the digital ecosystem worldwide, the world is getting segregated or separated in the digital divide. And in 2016, Canada government came up with a law to provide digital access to everybody in Canada. The digital access has been accelerated since COVID in 2020-21, and currently Canada has about 95% of the people who are covered and who have covered by broadband and have access to the internet. And now government is working towards providing the minimum speed or minimum quality guarantee of the internet access to everybody in the country. Now, digital divide could be of one of the three types. It could be an economic divide because of the financial ability or the financial viability for the individuals to access internet. Other is the usability divide, to what extent people can use and benefit from it. And finally, the divide could be in terms of empowerment. You might have access to the internet, you might not know how to use it. If you know how to use it with some basic settings, but to have a complete control over the features to set the appropriate privacy levels or a appropriate application in the context knowledge, that may not be available. So that's the empowerment divide. So governments are working on creating the divide as less as possible. The impact of the digital divide can have consequences on social mobility. It can have consequences on democracy, and it can have consequences on the economic growth of the individuals because of the digital divide. So governments are working on developing policies to ensure that everybody has a equity in access and use of the digital technologies. Let's talk about the other social impacts. Internet censorship. Internet censorship is the control or suppression of the publishing of or access to information on the internet. It may be carried out by governments or by private organizations, either at the behest of the government or on their own initiative. We are familiar with the famous internet censorship case of Twitter files, wherein the information pertaining to the COVID of the group of people who were not in line or not aligned with the government narrative over the COVID protocols were suppressed, or what we call shadow banned. So internet censorship can happen either at the publication or the publisher level, or it can happen at the user level. The user level censorship can happen in variety of ways, from the point an individual types in the web address in the browser to the point where that information reaches the server processes it, uh, and sends it back to the browser, and the page downloads. In between, there could be various touch points where the censorship could be built in on the user's ability to access information. The other is the publisher side censorship, where the government can determine who can see certain information, or to what extent they can see it, or when they can see it, or whether to kind of ban a particular server or a publisher from providing information to the people. So there is a fair bit of what we call stresses emerging at where and what level of internet censorship is implemented by the government and by the private bodies. The other social impact of the information technology or the information systems is the telecommuting and remote work, wherein the work can be performed at a remote location by virtue of an electronic communication and encompass a variety of employment types, from gig assignments to part-time contract work to traditional full-time employment. It has both plus and minuses. On one side, it saves a lot of time to commute, and the time spent on making arrangements, since you will not be available at your home. On the other side, how people can learn the culture or the ways a company work, or whether people remain equally committed and productive at when they are working remotely. So those are the kind of challenges that are emerging, but depending upon the nature of work, the seriousness of the work, and the company culture or the government's thinking, one can determine the right level or the appropriate level of telecommuting and remote working. So information systems have significant impact on the lives of the people, but right from the behavior to the ethical concerns to the possibilities of things failing or falling apart because of the digital world. So today technologies have created new categories of ethical dilemmas. Ethics are moral principles of conduct, and a code of ethics outlines a set of acceptable behaviors for a professional or social group. Intellectual property protections include copyrights, patents, and trademarks. Privacy is the ability to control information about oneself. There are a number of laws in Canada to protect a person's privacy and their personal information. The digital divide is the separation between those who have access to global networks and those who do not have. There are many initiatives underway in Canada to aid in providing internet access to everyone. Internet censorship is the control or suppression of the publishing of or access to information on the internet. And finally, telecommuting and remote work on the rise and comes with the benefits as well as concerns. Thank you.